It feels like to me that over the past few weeks, the culture war, censorship, the dystopian nightmare has rapidly accelerated. Like things are getting worse and worse, and they're getting worse faster and faster. Now we got this story from The Guardian. Facebook bans far-right groups including BNP, EDL, and Britain First. I don't know who these groups are. I don't know anything about them. What I do know is that Facebook said they were going to ban white nationalism. And that was a step forward in the hate policies of these platforms. And it's because you have a lot of people, primarily on the left, calling for censorship. We'll read through this story. And again, I want to stress, I do not know anything about these groups. I'm not saying this in any way to defend their beliefs or agree with them. I don't know anything about them. Let's just say this. I don't know who they are, so we'll assume they're bad people. But speech is important, and this is an example of the encroachment and the acceleration of censorship. Before we read this, because this is from today, we need to read this from the BBC. Websites to be fined over online harms under new proposals. Well, what in the ever-loving fuck is an online harm? Is the BBC harming me? Oh, what is this? Trump's making a kissy face. That is triggering me because it reminds me of assault. Therefore, the BBC is guilty of an online harm. Who gets to define what harm is? Well, let's find out. Internet sites could be fined or blocked if they fail to tackle online harms, such as terrorist propaganda and child abuse under government plans. The Department for Digital Culture, and this is in the UK, by the way. The Department for Digital Culture, Media, and Sports has proposed an independent watchdog that will write a code of practice for tech companies. Senior managers could be held liable for breaches with a possible levy on industry to fund the regulator. But critics say the plans threaten freedom of speech. They do. The Online Harms White Paper is a joint proposal from the DCMS and the Home Office. A public consultation on the plan will run for 12 weeks. The paper suggests establishing an independent regulator that can write a code of practice for social networks and internet companies, giving the regulator enforcement powers, including the ability to fine companies that break the rules, considering additional enforcement powers, such as the ability to fine company executives and force internet service providers to block sites that break the rules. Outlining the proposals, Culture Secretary Jeremy Wright said, "The era of self-regulation for online companies is over. Voluntary actions from industry to tackle online harms have not been applied consistently or gone far enough." And now, the most important thing. I love the First Amendment. I absolutely love it. I'm not the biggest fan of the Second Amendment, and many of you know this, but I do attempt to be logically consistent. And here's the reality. There are many people on the left who believe the First Amendment is a bad thing, or at least freedom of speech is a bad thing. They say freedom of speech just is a dog whistle for the far right, and the founding fathers were racist, yada, yada, yada. Those same people tend not to like the Second Amendment either. I think we do have an issue with the ease of access to weapons. I believe it is a fact, most gun owners are law-abiding, and it's extremely rare that a law-abiding gun owner does something wrong. In fact, many of the crimes, particularly in Chicago, are from illegal weapons. So what I came to realize is, you know what? I think we need to have a real conversation about gun ownership, but the same people who would tell me I have no right to speech would tell someone else they have no right to a weapon. So I recognize it's not my position to challenge the amendments. It's a larger conversation we need to have, so I'll leave it at that. As far as I'm concerned, if I have a right to speech, other people have a right to their arms and a right to be free from search and seizure, a right to be free from self-incrimination. And the rights are all-encompassing, and I shouldn't get to choose which one I think is right or wrong. I should be happy in that I think speech is paramount, above all else. And so I recognize that. And you know what? I say at the end of the day, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the ability to amend, it's fantastic. Wonderful. So here's the thing. When it comes to regulation, we see in the UK. Now, the reason I bring the first story up is because it's 10 days after this, online harms proposal. We see Facebook take this action. This is probably in line with their white nationalist thing. So again, I'm not saying these groups are good. I'm just highlighting that it's happening. Regulation in the UK is different because they don't have a guarantee on free speech. They don't. Technically, under the EU, they have some kind of free speech, although it doesn't really play out the way people expect it to. They don't. There are people who get arrested for being Holocaust deniers, and while I'm certainly no fan of that idea, well, people have a right to be stupid. Think about it. When it comes to the restrictions on thought and speech that we're seeing in Europe, what they're really telling you is that you have no legal right to be stupid. No, seriously. If somebody wants to deny the Holocaust, my response is they're probably not all that bright, right? Why should they be arrested for that? You're allowed to be dumb, at least in America, and that's one of the big challenges. When I was looking at the thing, everything going on with Alex Jones says on Joe Rogan that he called himself mentally deficient. I'm not going to say the word he did because they'll probably ban me for it, but yes, Alex Jones said, I'm kind of mentally deficient. I'm not going to use the R word. Yes, because they might actually censor me over this. What they're saying is that even when Alex Jones recognizes he's not all there, he's not allowed to say it, which means, are they going to start implementing, you're not allowed to use the internet if you're stupid? How many stupid people believe stupid things? A lot of people. A lot of people are dumb. Why should we tell someone you have no right to speech or to public conversation simply because you're not smart enough? And that's what it comes down to. Am I calling all these people stupid? No, that's not the point. The point is, at the very least, if someone believes that aliens are, flying around and the moon is made of cheese, while sure, you're allowed to believe these things, and I may be wrong, maybe the moon is made of cheese, at the very least we can say, if there's an established fact, like the earth is round, you're just dumb, should we ban those? Yes, they want to ban flat earthers. Yes, they want to ban anti-vaxxers. What they're saying is, you shouldn't be allowed to be stupid. No, for real. Think about it. By all means, if you believe the earth is flat, or that vaccines are cause autism and all that stuff, I'm not judging. I think you're wrong. Okay, I'm pretty damn sure the earth is round. I have no idea about the vaccine thing. It's not something I regularly track, and I typically err on the side of, I'm going to go with the officials for the most part. I lean towards trusting the government, but that doesn't mean I always do. By no means. You shouldn't just take the government's word for things. That's not what journalists should do. But when it comes to experts, what am I going to do about it? But the point is, you're allowed to believe it. In my opinion, I think you're just not, I think you're ignorant. I think you believe false things. But I think you should be allowed to talk about it. I believe if we're going to educate people and change their minds, the conversation needs to exist. But you can't tell people they're not allowed to. But as I pointed out in my video, the video I just did before this, you end up cleaning up groups. You make them look good. If someone is racist and you say no racism, well, then the left espouses their version, which is acceptable, and the right doesn't. What do we see? The left publishes in the New York Times, they oppose racial, I'm not going to be in an interracial relationship, they claim. And that's literally the New York Times. The Huffington Post, same thing. Conservatives aren't really talking about it all that much because they'll get banned for it. So now when the average person looks in that window, they see the left being racist and the right not being, and it's because of the bias. And that's the world you create to make yourself look bad. Let's figure out, what are online harms? The plans cover a range of issues that are clearly defined in law, such as spreading terrorist content, child abuse, which so-called revenge porn, hate crimes, harassment, and the sale of illegal goods. Yes, these things are all pretty bad, but what's a hate crime? As you know, somebody misgendering somebody else in the UK is potentially a hate crime. Making a joke video where your pug does a Nazi salute is a hate crime. Ask Count Dankula. But it also covers harmful behavior that has less clear legal definition, such as cyberbullying, trolling, and the spread of fake news. There it is. The spread of fake news. We are rapidly accelerating towards a nightmare dystopia. Listen, I, above anyone else, despise and hate fake news. And it's why I'm very critical of the mainstream media, those who claim they have the answers and were wrong for years on Russia. And what is it going to be? Fined over online harms, and then they say it can include disinformation. What does that mean? It means if you're not smart, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get banned. That is insane. Not everyone knows everything. I'll tell you what they're trying to do, at least in my opinion. There was a time when most information came down from the Great Tower, the broadcast tower. These small companies were few and far between. These companies were a small group, few and far between, which meant they could homogenize thought. It meant if the government wanted to justify a war, you need only convince a few outlets to push that narrative. And it worked. They claimed there were WMDs in Iraq. That was fake news. Are we going to come after them? Well, apparently we never did. They claim that's real news. It's authoritative news. They claim smaller outlets aren't. So what happens? Someone's going to come around and say, you know what? I think they're wrong. Fake news. They're going to slowly create the same broadcast tower again. Google search is already favoring CNN, so is YouTube. You know what that means? It means it's going to be extremely hard for voices like mine or yours to be heard when Google is putting its thumb on the scale to prop up mainstream media. Ultimately, it means the government gets to choose what is true and what isn't. And you know what happens then? They're going to say whatever they want about anybody. Oh, that person? Yep, yeah, they're a white supremacist. Banned. Your ideas are gone. You could come out and say, I think the government engaging in war is a problem. And they're going to say, racist, deleted. Or you're going to say something like, there were no WMDs in Iraq. And they're going to say, fake news, deleted. That's the world we're heading for. It's not so much about being wrong or being stupid. It's beyond that. It's that the government is going to find companies and tell you what is true and what isn't. Especially when you consider the BBC is funded in part by a public tax. So they do have restrictions, and they're going to play this game. Welcome to the future. It's happening faster and faster, and the nightmare dystopia is upon us. I got some more videos coming. One more video in a few minutes. I will see you then.